The ruins of ancient empires stand as silent witnesses to the passage of time. But what if these crumbling stones could speak? What if the echoes of Rome's aqueducts, the whispers of Mayan prophecies, and the shadows of Babylon's ziggurats hold secrets that could shape the future of humanity? We often think of these civilizations as relics of the past, but what if they're not just history? What if they're blueprints? From the Roman Empire's sprawling infrastructure that laid the foundation for modern cities to the Mayan calendar's eerie predictions that still spark debates today, these lost worlds offer more than just stories. They hold clues, lessons about societal collapse, technological innovation, and cultural evolution that are startlingly relevant to our world today. So, what can we learn from the rise and fall of these empires? How can their triumphs and failures guide us as we navigate an uncertain future? Join us on a journey through time where history, mystery, and prophecy collide, revealing how the past might just hold the keys to tomorrow. This is more than a story of ancient civilizations, it's a glimpse into the future of humanity itself. What makes an empire vanish without a trace? The concept of a lost empire isn't just about civilizations that rose and fell, it's about societies that once thrived, shaped the world, and then disappeared, leaving behind questions that echo through time. These are civilizations like the Indus Valley, the Khmer Empire, and the Aztecs, whose stories are etched in ruins, artifacts, and ancient texts. But what exactly defines a lost empire? It's more than just a society that collapsed. It's a civilization that once stood at the height of power, innovation, and cultural influence, only to be undone by war, environmental catastrophe, or profound cultural shift. Take the Indus Valley civilization, for example. Around 4,000 years ago, this advanced society flourished in what is now Pakistan and northwest India. They built planned cities with sophisticated drainage systems, traded across vast distances, and even developed a writing system we still can't fully decipher. Yet by 1800 BCE, their cities were abandoned. Was it climate change, shifting rivers, or something else that brought their downfall? The mystery lingers, and archaeologists continue to piece together clues from the artifacts they left behind. Then there's the Khmer Empire, which once ruled much of Southeast Asia. At its height, it constructed wonders like Angkor Wat, a sprawling temple complex that remains one of the most awe-inspiring architectural feats in history. But by the 15th century, the empire had faded. Some theories suggest environmental degradation, like deforestation and water mismanagement, weakened their society. Others point to external pressures or internal strife. Whatever the cause, the Khmer Empire's legacy is a testament to both human ingenuity and vulnerability. And who could forget the Aztecs? Their empire dominated Mesoamerica with a capital city, Tenochtitlan, that was larger than most European cities of the time. Yet, in just a few years, their society was decimated not only by Spanish conquistadors, but also by diseases they brought with them. The Aztecs' rapid collapse serves as a stark reminder of how quickly even the mightiest empires can fall. These lost empires aren't just relics of the past, they're mirrors reflecting the potential futures of humanity. Their stories remind us that no civilization, no matter how powerful, is immune to the forces of nature, conflict, or cultural change. But more than that, they offer us warnings and blueprints. By studying their rise and fall, we can uncover lessons about sustainability, resilience, and the consequences of our actions. These ancient societies didn't just vanish, they left behind a legacy that challenges us to think about the world we're building today. And that's what makes their mysteries so compelling. They're not just history, they're a glimpse into the possibilities and perils that lie ahead. The Roman Empire stands as one of history's most iconic examples of power and its fragility. At its height, it stretched from the British Isles to the deserts of North Africa, its influence shaping the world in ways still felt today. But even this colossal empire wasn't immune to collapse. The cracks began to form from within. Corruption seeped into its institutions, with leaders more focused on personal gain than the stability of the state. Overextension became a glaring issue. The empire's vast territories were impossible to govern effectively, leaving its borders vulnerable to external threats. And then came the invasions, waves of barbarian tribes breaching its weakened defenses, hastening its fall. But here's the chilling part: Rome's decline wasn't just a series of unfortunate events. It was a slow unraveling, a lesson in how power, no matter how vast, can crumble under its own weight. And when we look at modern superpowers, it's hard not to see parallels. Are today's nations repeating the same mistakes: overextension, internal division, and external pressures? These aren't just relics of the past, they're challenges we face now, amplified by the complexities of a globalized world. The Ottoman Empire offers another stark example. Once a sprawling dominion that bridged continents, it too fell victim to similar forces. Internal corruption eroded its foundations, while external pressures from rival empires chipped away at its edges. The lesson is clear: power, no matter how formidable, is never invincible. But there's another layer to this story, one often overlooked. Beyond the political and military factors, environmental shifts played a silent yet devastating role in the collapse of empires. Droughts, famines, and changing climates have quietly shaped the fate of civilizations, reminding us that even the mightiest powers are at the mercy of the natural world. And as we'll see next, history has a way of echoing itself in unexpected ways. The story of the Maya civilization is one of brilliance and tragedy, a tale of a society that flourished in the heart of Central America, only to collapse under the weight of its own success. At their peak, the Maya built sprawling cities, developed sophisticated calendars, and created art and architecture that still captivate us today. But beneath the surface of their achievements lay a growing environmental crisis. Deforestation, driven by the need for agricultural land and building materials, stripped the land of its natural defenses. Without trees to anchor the soil, erosion took hold, depleting the fertile ground that sustained their crops. The Mayas' reliance on maize, a crop that demands rich soil, only worsened the problem. Over time, the land could no longer support their growing population, leading to food shortages and societal unrest. Easter Island offers another stark example. This remote island, once covered in lush forests, was home to a thriving Polynesian culture known for its iconic stone statues, or moai. But as the islanders cleared trees to transport these massive figures and build canoes, they unknowingly set the stage for their own downfall. Without trees to protect the soil, the island's ecosystem began to collapse. Crops failed, and the islanders turned to warfare and cannibalism in a desperate struggle for survival. By the time European explorers arrived in the 18th century, the once vibrant society had been reduced to a fraction of its former glory. What makes these stories so haunting is how closely they mirror the environmental challenges we face today. Deforestation, soil depletion, and climate change are not relics of the past. They are pressing issues that threaten modern societies. The parallels are undeniable. Like the Maya and the Easter Islanders, we are extracting resources at an unsustainable rate, altering ecosystems, and ignoring the long-term consequences of our actions. The question is, will we learn from the lessons of the past, or are we doomed to repeat their mistakes? And yet, there is a crucial difference between then and now: technology. Modern advancements have given us tools to monitor and mitigate environmental damage in ways our ancestors could never have imagined. Satellite imagery tracks deforestation in real time, while innovations in agriculture promise to restore depleted soils. But even technology comes with its own risks. The very tools that could save us also have the potential to accelerate environmental destruction if misused. The challenge lies in finding a balance, harnessing the power of innovation without losing sight of the fragile ecosystems that sustain us. But what happens when the very tools that build an empire also carry the seeds of its downfall? Take the Roman aqueducts, for example. These marvels of engineering brought fresh water to cities, enabling urban growth and public health on an unprecedented scale. Yet, their complexity made them vulnerable. Sabotage an aqueduct, and entire cities could crumble into chaos. Similarly, the Chinese discovery of gunpowder revolutionized warfare, but it also destabilized societies, turning regional conflicts into devastating wars. Innovation, it seems, is a double-edged sword, a force that can elevate civilizations while simultaneously exposing their weaknesses. This pattern becomes even clearer when we look at the Bronze Age collapse. Around 1200 BC, a network of advanced trade routes connected empires from the Mediterranean to the Middle East. These networks were the lifeblood of prosperity, but they also created dependencies. When droughts, invasions, and political unrest disrupted trade, the entire system unraveled. The same technologies that had once fueled growth became liabilities, leaving once great empires vulnerable to collapse. Today, we face a similar dilemma. Artificial intelligence promises to revolutionize industries from healthcare to transportation. But what happens when we become so reliant on it that we can't function without it? Nuclear energy offers a clean alternative to fossil fuels, yet its destructive potential looms as a constant threat. The question isn't just whether these technologies will shape our future, it's whether we can manage their risks as effectively as we harness their benefits. And this brings us to another critical factor: culture. Technological advancements don't exist in a vacuum. They're shaped by the societies that create and use them. The way a civilization adapts or fails to adapt to its own innovations can determine whether it thrives or falls. So, while technology may set the stage, it's the choices we make, the values we uphold, and the cultural shifts we navigate that ultimately decide our fate. The Byzantine Empire stood as a beacon of culture, religion, and power for over 1,000 years. But beneath its glittering domes and mosaics, a quiet tension simmered. A tension between tradition and change. The Byzantines clung fiercely to their Orthodox Christian identity and imperial rituals, creating a society that was deeply rooted in its past. Yet, as the world around them evolved, their reluctance to adapt became a weakness. New ideas, technologies, and ways of thinking began to outpace them, leaving the empire isolated and out of touch. The Byzantine elite, so focused on preserving their traditions, failed to see how cultural stagnation was eroding their influence. The same story played out with the Inca, whose rigid societal structures and centralized control left them vulnerable when the Spanish arrived with their own cultural and technological revolution. In both cases, an inability to balance tradition with innovation became a fatal flaw. But what happens when the opposite occurs, when cultural change happens too quickly? Rapid shifts in values, beliefs, and identities can fracture societies, leaving people feeling disconnected from their roots. We see this today in the modern world, where globalization and technology have accelerated cultural evolution to an unprecedented pace. Some communities embrace these changes while others push back, clinging to familiar traditions. This polarization creates rifts, weakening the social fabric that holds societies together. Are we, like the Byzantines or the Inca, approaching a cultural tipping point, one where the pace of change threatens to outstrip our ability to adapt? This tension between tradition and transformation isn't just a cultural phenomenon, it's deeply tied to economics. The Byzantine Empire's rigid economic systems, for example, struggled to keep up with the dynamic trade networks of the Mediterranean. Similarly, the Incas' reliance on a centralized economy left them ill-prepared for the upheaval brought by the Spanish. Economic stability and cultural cohesion often go hand in hand, and when one falters, the other is quick to follow. As we examine these lessons from history, it's worth asking, how do our own economic systems shape the cultural landscape we live in today? And could the way we manage resources, trade, and wealth determine whether we thrive or decline? History has shown time and again that even the most prosperous empires carry within them the seeds of their own destruction. Nowhere is this more evident than in the relationship between economic systems and collapse. Take the French monarchy, for instance, a regime that seemed unshakable until its final days. Beneath the opulence of Versailles and the grandeur of its courts lay a deeply fractured society where wealth disparity reached staggering heights. The aristocracy lived in luxury while the majority of the population struggled under the weight of heavy taxation and scarce resources. This imbalance wasn't just unfair, it was unsustainable. When the people could no longer bear the strain, the system broke, leading to revolution and the monarchy's ultimate downfall. But it's not just ancient regimes that fell victim to economic mismanagement. The Soviet Union, a superpower that once rivaled the United States, also succumbed to its own internal contradictions. While the USSR projected strength on the global stage, its economy was riddled with inefficiencies. Centralized planning led to chronic shortages, and the state's overextension in military and industrial projects drained its resources. The system, built on the promise of equality, ironically created a new class of elites who controlled wealth and power. Over time, these flaws became too great to ignore, and the empire crumbled under its own weight. Even the Dutch Golden Age, often celebrated as a pinnacle of economic success, reveals a cautionary tale. At its height, the Netherlands was a global trading powerhouse, with Amsterdam serving as the financial capital of the world. Yet, this prosperity masked deeper vulnerabilities. The economy became overly reliant on speculative ventures, like the infamous tulip mania, which eventually burst. Wealth was concentrated in the hands of a few, while many citizens faced economic instability. The Dutch Golden Age, for all its brilliance, couldn't sustain itself forever. This raises a pressing question: are modern economic systems heading toward a similar collapse? Today, we see widening wealth gaps, overexploitation of natural resources, and economies stretched thin by debt and overextension. The parallels are hard to ignore. Yet, history also offers a glimmer of hope. Leadership, as much as economics, plays a critical role in determining an empire's fate. The choices made by those in power, whether to address inequality, manage resources wisely, or adapt to changing circumstances, can mean the difference between survival and collapse. So, as we examine the lessons of the past, we must also consider how leadership shapes the future. The rise and fall of empires often hinge on leadership, a single thread that can either strengthen or unravel the fabric of entire civilizations. Take the Mongol Empire, for instance, once the largest contiguous empire in history, stretching from Eastern Europe to the Sea of Japan. At its peak under rulers like Genghis Khan, it was a model of unity and efficiency. But as leadership weakened over generations, infighting and corruption fractured its vast territories. Without strong governance, even the most powerful empire can crumble from within. Then there's the British Empire, which at its height controlled nearly a quarter of the world's landmass. Yet, its decline wasn't just due to external pressures like wars or revolutions. Internal mismanagement, economic strain, and a failure to adapt to changing global dynamics played a significant role. Leaders who clung to outdated policies and ignored the needs of their people sowed the seeds of their own downfall. Perhaps one of the most infamous examples comes from ancient Rome, where Nero's reign serves as a stark warning. His extravagance, paranoia, and neglect of governance plunged Rome into chaos. While he famously fiddled as Rome burned, whether true or not, the metaphor endures. Leaders who prioritize personal gain over the welfare of their people leave their empires vulnerable to collapse. This raises a critical question: are today's leaders learning from these historical missteps? While the world has changed, the patterns of poor governance, corruption, short-sighted policies, and a disconnect from the people remain eerily similar. History reminds us that leadership isn't just about power, it's about responsibility. But leadership failures don't exist in a vacuum. They often create openings for external threats to exploit. From the fall of Rome to the collapse of the Soviet Union, weak governance has made empires easy targets for invasions, coups, and revolutions. The next time you look at the headlines, consider this: how much of today's turmoil is shaped by the lessons or mistakes of the past? The fall of empires often comes not from within, but from the relentless pressure of external forces. Take the Gupta Empire, for instance. Once a beacon of cultural and scientific advancement in ancient India, it crumbled under the weight of repeated invasions by the Huns. Despite their earlier resilience, the Gupta rulers found themselves overextended militarily, unable to defend their vast territories. This pattern of military strain and unpreparedness is a recurring theme in history. Strong empires, stretched too thin, become vulnerable to even the smallest cracks in their defenses. Then there's the Byzantine Empire, a civilization that stood for over 1,000 years. Its decline was not sudden but gradual, marked by a series of invasions and shifting alliances that chipped away at its foundations. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 is perhaps the most dramatic example. Once considered an impenetrable fortress, the city fell to the Ottoman Turks after a prolonged siege. The Byzantines, despite their ingenuity and wealth, were unprepared for the scale and determination of their adversaries. The moment Constantinople's walls were breached, it signaled not just the end of an empire but a turning point in global history, ushering in a new era of power dynamics. This raises an important question: are modern nations any more prepared for external threats than these ancient empires were? Today, the nature of invasions has evolved. Cyber attacks, economic warfare, and political destabilization now sit alongside traditional military threats. Yet, the lessons of the past remain eerily relevant. Overextension, whether in military campaigns or global influence, can leave even the most powerful nations exposed. But external threats are only part of the story. Often, they expose and exacerbate internal weaknesses. Rebellions, unrest, and political infighting can destabilize an empire from the inside, making it easier for external forces to exploit. The Gupta and Byzantine empires both faced internal dissent as much as external invasions. It's a reminder that no empire, no matter how mighty, is immune to the dual pressures of outside aggression and inside turmoil. As we reflect on these historical collapses, we begin to see a pattern. External threats rarely act alone. They are often the spark that ignites a fire already smoldering within. The question isn't just whether modern nations can withstand invasions, but whether they can address the internal vulnerabilities that make them susceptible in the first place. The downfall of empires often comes not from external invaders but from the cracks that form within. Take the Roman Republic, for instance. It wasn't just the barbarian hordes at the gates that brought it to its knees. It was the deep divisions between the ruling elite and the common people. The gap between the rich and the poor widened, and political corruption became rampant. Senators fought for power while the plebeians struggled for basic rights. This internal strife created a fertile ground for civil wars, weakening the republic until it could no longer sustain itself. Similarly, the Qing dynasty in China faced repeated uprisings like the Taiping Rebellion, which was fueled by social inequality and widespread dissatisfaction. Millions died as the empire fractured under the weight of its own internal conflicts. but perhaps one of the most dramatic examples of internal rebellion reshaping history is the French Revolution. Here, a society divided by class and privilege erupted into chaos. The monarchy, the clergy, and the aristocracy clung to power, while the working class and peasants bore the brunt of economic hardship. When the people rose up, they didn't just demand change, they tore down the old order entirely. The French Revolution serves as a stark reminder of what happens when inequality and political unrest reach a boiling point. Yet, it also raises a pressing question: could modern societies face similar fractures? Today, we see growing divides, economic, political, and ideological, across the globe. Are we immune to the kind of upheaval that toppled empires of the past? Interestingly, cultural exchange plays a dual role in this dynamic. On one hand, it can strengthen empires by fostering unity and innovation. The Roman Republic, for example, thrived by absorbing and integrating the cultures of conquered peoples. On the other hand, cultural exchange can also sow the seeds of discord. When different groups within an empire feel their identities are threatened or their voices unheard, tensions can escalate. The Qing dynasty struggled with this as well, as it tried to balance the diverse cultures within its vast borders. This delicate interplay between unity and division is a recurring theme in history, one that continues to shape our world today. One of the most fascinating aspects of history is how cultures collide, merge, and transform over time. Take the Persian Empire, for instance, a sprawling civilization that thrived not just through military might, but by embracing the diversity of the peoples it conquered. The Persians didn't just impose their own culture, they absorbed the traditions, languages, and ideas of the lands they ruled. This exchange created a rich, vibrant society that became a model of tolerance and innovation. But even with such openness, the Persian Empire eventually faced challenges when assimilation tipped into cultural erasure. It sowed seeds of resentment among its subjects. Now contrast that with the Mongol Empire, which took a different approach. Under leaders like Genghis Khan, the Mongols created an empire that stretched across continents, connecting east and west like never before. The Silk Road, a network of trade routes that flourished under Mongol rule, became a melting pot of cultures, religions, and technologies. Merchants, scholars, and artisans traveled thousands of miles, sharing everything from spices and silks to philosophies and scientific knowledge. This exchange didn't just enrich the Mongol Empire, it reshaped the world. Yet, even here, the balance was delicate. While the Mongols allowed conquered peoples to maintain their customs, their dominance often overshadowed local identities, leaving a legacy that's both celebrated and critiqued. This brings us to a question as relevant today as it was centuries ago. How do modern societies balance cultural exchange with the need to preserve traditions? In an age of globalization where ideas and influences cross borders at the speed of a click, are we fostering diversity or risking cultural homogenization? The lessons of history suggest that the most enduring empires thrived when they embraced the richness of different cultures without erasing them. And speaking of influence, few forces have shaped empires as profoundly as religion. From the divine authority claimed by rulers to the spiritual unity that bound vast populations, faith has been both a unifier and a divider. But that's a story for another moment as we explore how religion became the backbone of empires and sometimes their downfall. The rise and fall of empires often hinges on more than just military might or economic power. It's deeply tied to the beliefs that bind people together. Religion and ideology have been some of the most potent forces in shaping civilizations, uniting millions under shared values while also sparking conflicts that could tear societies apart. Take the Holy Roman Empire, for example. It wasn't just a political entity, it was a spiritual one, rooted in the idea of divine authority and Christian unity. The emperor wasn't just a ruler, he was seen as God's representative on earth, and that belief gave the empire a sense of purpose that lasted for centuries. But this reliance on religious unity also had its limits. When internal divisions arose, like the Protestant Reformation, the empire began to fracture, proving how fragile ideological cohesion can be. Similarly, the Islamic caliphates thrived on a shared faith that transcended borders, languages, and ethnicities. The concept of the Ummah, or global Muslim community, created a sense of belonging that allowed the caliphates to expand rapidly. But even here, ideological disputes like the Sunni-Shia split weakened the empire over time, showing how deeply faith can both build and divide. Perhaps one of the most striking examples of religion and ideology shaping history is the Crusades. What began as a call to reclaim the Holy Land spiraled into centuries of conflict, fueled by a mix of religious fervor, political ambition, and cultural clashes. The Crusades weren't just about religion, they were about identity, power, and the clash of civilizations. And while they may seem like a distant chapter in history, they raise a haunting question. Are modern ideological divides, whether political, religious, or cultural, echoing the same patterns of conflict and polarization that brought empires to their knees? As we reflect on how belief systems have shaped the past, it's impossible to ignore another driving force behind empires, trade, and commerce. While religion and ideology often provided the spiritual glue, it was the flow of goods, ideas, and wealth that kept empires thriving. From the Silk Road to the spice trade, commerce has always been the lifeblood of civilizations, connecting distant lands and fueling innovation. And just as religion could both unite and divide, trade had its own double-edged impact, creating prosperity but also competition and exploitation. So, as we turn to the next chapter of this story, let's explore how the quest for wealth and resources has shaped the fate of empires and continues to shape our world today. The rise and fall of great empires often hinge on a single, powerful force: trade. From the bustling markets of Venice to the far-reaching network of the Hanseatic League, commerce has been the lifeblood of civilizations, driving exploration, innovation, and sometimes conflict. Take the Venetian Empire, for instance. Nestled in the heart of the Mediterranean, Venice became a trading powerhouse by mastering the art of maritime commerce. Its merchants navigated treacherous waters to bring silks, spices, and other luxuries from the East to Europe, amassing wealth and influence that turned a small city-state into an empire. But Venice's success wasn't just about goods, it was about connections. Their trade routes created a web of alliances and rivalries, shaping the political landscape of their time. Similarly, the Hanseatic League, a coalition of merchant guilds in Northern Europe, thrived by controlling key trade routes across the Baltic and North Seas. By banding together, these cities created a system of mutual protection and economic stability, allowing them to dominate trade for centuries. But this reliance on commerce came with risks. When trade routes shifted or economic dependencies grew too heavy, even the mightiest empires could falter. The spice trade, for example, was a double-edged sword. While it fueled exploration and brought immense wealth, it also sparked fierce competition among nations, leading to wars and colonial exploitation. The quest for spices drove explorers like Vasco da Gama to chart new paths across the globe, but it also laid the groundwork for centuries of conflict and inequality. So, what does this mean for us today? Modern trade systems, while more complex, face similar challenges. The global economy connects us in ways the Venetians and Hanseatic traders could never have imagined, but it also creates vulnerabilities. Supply chain disruptions, economic dependencies, and geopolitical tensions remind us that the lessons of the past are still relevant. Are our current trade systems sustainable, or are we repeating the same patterns that brought down empires? As we reflect on history, one thing becomes clear: Trade has always been a driving force behind human progress, but it requires careful balance. The empires that endured were those that adapted, diversified, and understood the delicate interplay between commerce and stability. And as we look to the future, the story of trade reminds us that exploration and expansion, whether across oceans or into new markets, will always shape the destiny of nations. The story of empires is often a tale of exploration and expansion, a double-edged sword that can lead to incredible wealth and power, but also to downfall. Take the Spanish Empire, for instance. In the 16th century, Spanish explorers set sail across uncharted waters, driven by the promise of gold and new land. Their discoveries in the Americas brought unprecedented riches, with silver and gold flowing back to Europe, but this newfound wealth came at a cost. As the empire stretched its reach across continents, it became increasingly difficult to govern. The more territory they claimed, the thinner their resources and manpower were spread. Overextension became their Achilles heel, leaving them vulnerable to rebellion and external threats. The British Empire faced a similar challenge centuries later. At its peak, it was famously said that the sun never set on the British Empire, with colonies spanning the globe. The wealth generated from these territories fueled the Industrial Revolution and cemented Britain as a global superpower. Yet, maintaining such a vast empire required immense effort and resources. The strain of managing colonies thousands of miles away, coupled with rising independence movements, eventually led to its decline. Both the Spanish and British empires show us that while expansion can bring immense rewards, it also carries the risk of overreach. This brings us to a critical question: are modern nations repeating these historical mistakes? In today's interconnected world, the concept of expansion has shifted from physical territory to economic and political influence. Nations now compete for control over trade routes, digital infrastructure, and global markets. But just like the empires of old, overextending in these areas can lead to instability. The lessons of history remind us that balance is key. Knowing when to grow and when to consolidate is crucial for long-term success. And while exploration and expansion shaped empires, communication played an equally vital role. The ability to share information quickly and efficiently often determined an empire's strength. In the next section, we'll explore how communication networks, from ancient road systems to modern digital infrastructure, have historically influenced the rise and fall of civilizations. Because in the end, it's not just about how far an empire expands, but how well it connects its people and ideas. The ability to communicate and control information has always been one of the most powerful tools in the hands of empires. Take ancient Egypt, for instance, where hieroglyphs weren't just a form of writing, they were a way to immortalize the pharaoh's divine authority. These symbols, carved into temples and tombs, served as both a record of history and a form of propaganda, ensuring that the ruler's legacy was etched into the very fabric of the empire. But it wasn't just about glorifying the elite. Written language also allowed for the codification of laws, the recording of trade, and the spread of religious beliefs. In essence, it was the foundation of centralized power. Fast forward to the Ming dynasty in China, and you'll see a similar pattern but with a twist. The Chinese were among the first to develop woodblock printing and later movable type. This technological leap didn't just make books more accessible, it transformed how knowledge was shared. The Ming emperors understood the power of this tool, using it to disseminate Confucian ideals and reinforce their rule. But here's the catch: while printing enabled the spread of ideas, it also became a means of censorship. Texts that challenged the status quo were often banned or destroyed, showing how information could be both a liberator and a suppressor. Then came the printing press in Europe, a revolution that reshaped societies in ways no one could have predicted. Suddenly, books were no longer the exclusive domain of the wealthy or the clergy. Ideas could travel faster and farther than ever before, sparking movements like the Renaissance and the Reformation. But with this newfound freedom came conflict. Empires and religious institutions struggled to control the flow of information, leading to censorship, propaganda, and even wars. The printing press didn't just change how people communicated, it changed the very structure of power, which brings us to today. In a world where information is instantaneous and ubiquitous, are we truly more empowered or are we more vulnerable? Social media, for example, has given a voice to millions, but it has also become a tool for misinformation and manipulation. Governments and corporations now have unprecedented access to our data, raising questions about privacy and autonomy. The parallels to ancient empires are striking. Just as pharaohs used hieroglyphs to control narratives and Ming rulers used printing to shape ideologies, modern leaders and institutions wield digital platforms to influence public opinion. And yet, there's another layer to this story. Communication doesn't just shape politics, it reflects the health of a society. Think about art and culture. In thriving empires, art often flourishes, serving as a mirror to the values and aspirations of the people. But in times of decline, art can become stagnant or overly propagandistic, signaling deeper issues within the empire. The way a society communicates, whether through art, writing, or even social media, offers a glimpse into its soul. So, as we navigate our own information age, perhaps the question isn't just about who controls the narrative, but how that narrative shapes who we are. Throughout history, art and culture have served as mirrors reflecting the vitality or decline of civilizations. Take the Italian city-states during the Renaissance, for instance. These bustling hubs of creativity weren't just producing paintings and sculptures. They were showcasing the confidence, ambition, and intellectual energy of their societies. The Sistine Chapel, with its breathtaking frescoes by Michelangelo, stands as a testament to this cultural flourishing. Commissioned by the powerful Medici family, it wasn't merely a religious space, it was a bold declaration of the city-state's influence and sophistication. When empires thrive, their art often becomes grand, innovative, and deeply symbolic, capturing the spirit of their time. But art isn't just about beauty or prestige, it's also a barometer of societal health. The Mughal Empire, for example, reached its zenith under Emperor Akbar, who championed a culture of inclusivity and intellectual curiosity. This era saw the blending of Persian, Indian, and Islamic artistic traditions, producing masterpieces like the Taj Mahal. Yet, as the empire began to wane, so did its cultural output. The vibrancy of its art faded, mirroring the political and economic instability that followed. This raises a compelling question. Are modern cultural trends indicators of societal health today? Think about the music, films, and art being produced now. Do they reflect resilience, creativity, and hope, or do they reveal underlying tensions and uncertainties? Just as the Renaissance and Mughal periods gave us clues about their empire's trajectories, perhaps our own cultural expressions are offering insights into the state of our world. Art and culture, however, don't exist in isolation. They're deeply intertwined with education and knowledge, two pillars that have historically shaped the rise and fall of empires. From the libraries of ancient Alexandria to the universities of medieval Europe, societies that prioritized learning often experienced golden ages of innovation and influence. As we explore this connection further, we'll see how the pursuit of knowledge has been a driving force behind some of history's most enduring civilizations. Throughout history, the rise and fall of empires have often been deeply intertwined with their commitment to education and the pursuit of knowledge. Take the Islamic Golden Age, for instance, a period spanning the 8th to the 13th centuries, where intellectual curiosity wasn't just encouraged, it was celebrated. At the heart of this era stood the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, a beacon of learning that brought together scholars from across the known world. Here, texts from ancient Greece, Persia, India, and beyond were translated, studied, and expanded upon. This wasn't just a library, it was a melting pot of ideas where mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy flourished. The result, a cultural and scientific renaissance that shaped the world for centuries to come. But the Islamic Golden Age wasn't the only empire to recognize the power of education. Fast forward to the Enlightenment in Europe, and you'll see a similar pattern. Universities became the engines of progress, fostering thinkers like Isaac Newton, Voltaire, and Immanuel Kant. Libraries, once rare and exclusive, began to open their doors to a broader public, democratizing access to knowledge. Scientific discovery became a driving force behind economic and military power, propelling nations like Britain and France to global dominance. So, what can we learn from these examples? Both the Islamic Golden Age and the Enlightenment show us that education isn't just about individual achievement, it's a cornerstone of societal strength. But here's a question worth pondering. Are modern education systems truly preparing us for the challenges of the future? While we've made incredible strides in technology and accessibility, some argue that our focus has shifted too far toward specialization at the expense of critical thinking and creativity. Could we be losing the kind of broad, interdisciplinary approach that once fueled the greatest intellectual movements in history? As we reflect on the role of education in shaping empires, it's impossible to ignore the infrastructure that supported these systems of learning. From the grand libraries of Baghdad to the sprawling universities of Europe, the physical spaces dedicated to knowledge played a crucial role in fostering innovation. These weren't just buildings, they were symbols of a society's commitment to progress. And as we'll see next, infrastructure, whether in the form of roads, aqueducts, or communication networks, has always been a key factor in the rise and endurance of great civilizations. The ancient world was built on the backs of ambitious infrastructure projects, and few empires understood this better than the Romans. Their vast network of roads stretched over 250,000 miles, connecting every corner of their domain. These roads weren't just dirt paths, they were engineering marvels layered with gravel, stone, and concrete to withstand the test of time. But why did they invest so heavily in these projects? The answer lies in their dual purpose. Roads weren't just about moving goods or people, they were arteries of power, allowing armies to march swiftly, messages to travel faster, and trade to flourish. The Roman road network became the backbone of their empire, binding distant provinces to the heart of Rome itself. But the Romans didn't stop there. They also mastered the art of urbanization, creating cities that were both functional and awe-inspiring. Take their aqueducts, for example. These towering structures carried fresh water from distant sources into bustling urban centers, supporting populations that would have otherwise struggled to survive. The city of Rome itself was a testament to this ingenuity, with its carefully planned streets, public baths, and monumental architecture. Urbanization wasn't just about building bigger cities, it was about creating spaces where culture, commerce, and governance could thrive. The Inca Empire offers another fascinating example of infrastructure mastery. High in the Andes, the Incas built an intricate system of roads and bridges that connected their mountainous terrain. Unlike the Roman roads, these paths were often carved into cliffs or suspended over gorges, showcasing their ability to adapt to harsh environments and their cities. Machu Picchu stands as a stunning example of urban planning, with its terraced fields, precise stonework, and integration with the natural landscape. The Incas didn't just build cities, they harmonized them with the world around them. Now, here's a question worth pondering. Are our modern infrastructure systems as sustainable as those of the past? While we've achieved incredible feats of engineering from skyscrapers to highways, we're also grappling with the consequences of rapid urbanization, congestion, pollution, and resource depletion. The Romans and Incas built for longevity, but are we? Their lessons remind us that infrastructure isn't just about convenience, it's about survival and legacy. And speaking of survival, let's not forget the role of military strategy in shaping empires. Infrastructure and urbanization weren't just about civilian life, they were tools of conquest and control. The Roman roads, for instance, allowed their legions to move with unmatched speed, securing their dominance. The Incas used their network to maintain order across vast and varied landscapes. In the end, the strength of an empire wasn't just measured by its wealth or territory. It was defined by how well it could move, protect, and sustain itself. And that brings us to the next chapter in our journey, the art of war and how it forged the fate of civilizations. The rise and fall of empires often hinged on their ability to adapt and innovate in the face of conflict. Take the Mongol Empire, for instance, a force that reshaped the world through its mastery of cavalry and mobility. Their ability to strike swiftly and unpredictably allowed them to conquer vast territories from the steppes of Central Asia to the gates of Europe. But it wasn't just speed that made them formidable, it was their adaptability. They absorbed and repurposed the technologies and strategies of the cultures they encountered, turning weaknesses into strength. This relentless innovation became the backbone of their dominance, proving that military strategy is as much about evolution as it is about brute force. On the other side of the spectrum, the Ottoman Empire demonstrated the power of combining military ingenuity with engineering brilliance. The Siege of Constantinople in 1453 stands as a defining moment in history. The Ottomans didn't just rely on traditional siege tactics. They introduced game-changing innovations like massive cannons capable of breaching the city's legendary walls. This wasn't just a battle of numbers, it was a clash of ideas where the Ottomans' willingness to embrace new technologies tipped the scales in their favor. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of an era and the rise of a new superpower, showing how strategic foresight could alter the course of history. But military strategy wasn't just about weapons and walls. Naval power played a pivotal role in shaping empires too. The Ottomans, for example, used their navy to dominate key trade routes, securing their economic and political influence across the Mediterranean. Control of the seas meant control of resources, and empires that mastered naval warfare often held the upper hand in both conquest and diplomacy. This intersection of military might and economic strategy reveals a deeper truth. Empires didn't just fight battles, they fought for survival, expansion, and legacy. So, what can modern military strategies learn from these ancient lessons? The echoes of the past are hard to ignore. The importance of adaptability, the integration of technology, and the ability to anticipate an opponent's moves remain as relevant today as they were centuries ago. But warfare isn't the only tool empires have wielded. Diplomacy and alliances have historically been just as critical in shaping the destiny of nations. From the Mongol Empire's network of vassal states to the Ottoman Empire's intricate web of alliances, the ability to negotiate and forge partnerships often determined the longevity of an empire. After all, the greatest battles aren't always fought on the battlefield. Sometimes they're fought at the negotiating table. The Habsburg Empire, one of history's most enduring dynasties, didn't rely solely on military might to expand its influence. It mastered the art of diplomacy. Through strategic marriages, carefully negotiated treaties, and delicate power balances, the Habsburgs turned alliances into a cornerstone of their empire. Take, for instance, the famous Habsburg motto, "Let others wage war, you happy Austria marry." This wasn't just a clever saying, it was a blueprint for survival. By marrying into royal families across Europe, the Habsburgs secured alliances that often proved more effective than battlefields. But as history shows, even the most carefully woven web of alliances can unravel when power dynamics shift. The Delian League offers another fascinating case study. Formed in the 5th century BCE, this alliance of Greek city-states was initially created to protect against Persian aggression. Athens, as the dominant member, used the League's resources to build its own power, effectively turning allies into subjects. Over time, this imbalance eroded trust and sowed resentment, leading to the League's eventual collapse. It's a stark reminder that alliances, while powerful, are only as strong as the mutual respect and shared goals that bind them. Fast forward to the 19th century, and we see another pivotal moment in diplomatic history, the Congress of Vienna. In the aftermath of Napoleon's fall, European powers gathered to redraw the map of the continent. What made this Congress unique was its focus on balance, ensuring no single nation could dominate the others. Through negotiation and compromise, the diplomats at Vienna created a system that maintained relative peace in Europe for nearly a century. But even this achievement wasn't without flaws. The Congress prioritized stability over justice, often ignoring the aspirations of smaller nations and peoples. It raises an important question: are modern diplomatic efforts any more effective? While today's treaties and international organizations aim to foster cooperation, they still grapple with the same challenges of power imbalances and conflicting interests. What's often overlooked, however, is how societal values shape the success or failure of these alliances. Empires rise and fall not just on the strength of their armies or the cleverness of their diplomats, but on the values they embody and the trust they inspire. The Habsburgs, for all their diplomatic prowess, struggled to adapt to the rising tide of nationalism in the 19th century. Their empire, built on loyalty to a monarch, couldn't withstand the growing desire for self-determination among its diverse peoples. Similarly, the Delian League's downfall was as much about cultural and ideological divides as it was about power struggles. This interplay between diplomacy and societal values offers a timeless lesson. Whether in the halls of Vienna or the negotiating tables of today, the success of alliances often hinges on more than just treaties and trade deals. It's about understanding the people behind the politics. And as we look back at these lost empires, we're reminded that the future of our own global alliances may depend on how well we balance power with principle. What defines the rise and fall of an empire? Is it military might, economic power, or something far deeper, like the values and ethics that shape its people? Throughout history, the moral compass of a society has often been the invisible force steering its destiny. Take, for instance, the Maurya Empire in ancient India. Under the rule of Ashoka, this empire transformed from a conquest-driven state to one guided by principles of compassion and justice, all because of a single, profound shift in societal values. After witnessing the devastation of the Kalinga War, Ashoka embraced Buddhism, renouncing violence and championing non-violence, tolerance, and social welfare. His edicts, carved into stone across his empire, weren't just declarations of power, they were blueprints for a society built on ethical foundations. But what happens when an empire's values clash with its ambitions? Fast forward to the Victorian British Empire, and you'll find a stark contrast. This was an empire driven by industrial innovation and global expansion, but it was also one grappling with the ethics of colonialism. While Victorian society prided itself on moral progress, abolishing slavery, and championing social reforms, it simultaneously justified the exploitation of colonized peoples. This duality reveals a critical truth: societal values can both uplift and undermine, depending on how they're applied. Justice and morality, when wielded inconsistently, can become tools of oppression rather than liberation. So, what does this mean for us today? Are modern societal values guiding us toward a better future, or are we repeating the same patterns of the past? The answer may lie in how we adapt. Empires that thrived, whether through Ashoka's ethical reforms or Britain's industrial advancements, were those that embraced change. They understood that innovation wasn't just about technology or economics. It was about rethinking what it meant to live justly in an ever-evolving world. As we navigate our own challenges, perhaps the greatest lesson from history is this: the values we choose to uphold today will shape the empires or societies we build tomorrow. The Song dynasty and the Dutch Republic stand as towering examples of how innovation and adaptation can propel societies to extraordinary heights. During the Song dynasty, China witnessed a golden age of technological advancement, from the invention of gunpowder and the compass to groundbreaking developments in agriculture and metallurgy. These innovations didn't just change the way people lived, they reshaped the very fabric of the empire, enabling it to thrive economically and militarily. Meanwhile, the Dutch Republic in the 17th century became a global powerhouse by embracing economic reforms and pioneering new trade routes. Their ability to adapt to shifting global dynamics allowed them to dominate commerce and establish a cultural renaissance that still echoes today. But innovation isn't just about creating new tools or systems, it's about how societies respond to change. Take the Industrial Revolution, for instance. This period wasn't just about steam engines and factories. It was a seismic shift in how humanity thought about work, production, and progress. Empires that adapted quickly, like Britain, surged ahead, while those that resisted change found themselves struggling to keep up. It makes you wonder, are modern societies adapting fast enough to the rapid changes we face today? From climate challenges to technological disruptions, the stakes are high, and the lessons from history are clear: adaptation is survival. This brings us to another fascinating layer: the role of prophecy and prediction in shaping empires. Throughout history, leaders have often turned to seers, oracles, and even early forms of data analysis to guide their decisions. Whether it was the ancient Chinese practice of interpreting celestial omens or the Dutch reliance on economic forecasting, the ability to anticipate the future has always been a powerful tool. But here's the twist: prophecy isn't just about predicting what's to come, it's about preparing for it, and that preparation, as history shows us, is where true power lies. Throughout history, prophecies and predictions have held a powerful grip on the fate of empires, shaping decisions and destinies. Take the Aztec Empire, for instance. Their belief in prophecies was so profound that it dictated their entire worldview. The Aztecs believed in the cyclical nature of time, with each era ending in cataclysm. This belief was central to their rituals and even their political decisions. When Spanish conquistadors arrived, many Aztecs interpreted their arrival as the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, the return of the god Quetzalcoatl. This belief, whether true or not, played a significant role in their eventual downfall. It's a reminder of how deeply prophecy can influence even the most powerful civilizations. The Byzantine Empire, too, was no stranger to the allure of prediction. Oracles and astrologers were often consulted by emperors, their words carrying immense weight. The Byzantines believed that the stars and divine messages could guide their decisions, from military campaigns to diplomatic negotiations. One famous example is the prophecy surrounding the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Many believed it was foretold centuries earlier, and when it finally happened, it was seen as an inevitable fulfillment of destiny. These stories highlight how prophecy wasn't just a cultural curiosity, it was a force that shaped history. Then there's the Mayan calendar, a source of both fascination and fear. The Mayans were masterful astronomers and mathematicians, and their calendar system was incredibly sophisticated. But when the world reached the end of one of their great cycles in 2012, it sparked widespread speculation and even panic. Some believed it predicted the end of the world, while others saw it as a symbolic reset. This modern reaction to an ancient prediction raises an important question. Are today's predictions about the future any more accurate? From climate forecasts to technological advancements, we still rely on predictions to guide our decisions, much like the empires of old. What can we learn from these lost civilizations? One lesson is the power of belief. Whether it's the Aztecs interpreting the arrival of strangers as divine will or modern societies bracing for the implications of artificial intelligence, predictions carry weight because we give them meaning. But history also teaches us to approach prophecy with a critical eye. The Aztecs and Byzantines show us how easily belief can be manipulated or misinterpreted, leading to decisions with lasting consequences. As we look to the future, perhaps the greatest lesson is to balance hope with caution, learning from the past without being bound by it. History has a way of circling back, doesn't it? The echoes of lost empires can still be heard in the challenges we face today. Take climate change, for instance. The ancient Mayans, once a thriving civilization, faced environmental collapse due to deforestation and drought. Fast forward to the 21st century, and we're grappling with rising sea levels, extreme weather, and dwindling resources. The parallels are striking, yet unlike the Mayans, we have the tools and knowledge to change course. But will we? Then there's political polarization. The Roman Empire at its height was torn apart by internal divisions and power struggles. Sound familiar? Today, societies around the world are deeply fractured along ideological lines, with trust in institutions eroding at an alarming rate. The Soviet Union's collapse in the late 20th century offers a more recent example. A superpower undone not by external forces, but by its own inability to adapt and unite. Is history repeating itself, or are we finally learning to bridge divides? And let's not forget our growing dependence on technology. The ancient Egyptians built wonders like the pyramids, relying on innovations that seemed unshakable. Yet their civilization eventually faded. Today, we're tethered to devices and systems that shape every aspect of our lives. What happens if the digital infrastructure we've come to rely on fails? Are we laying the groundwork for resilience or creating a house of cards? So, are we on the brink of a new era or a new collapse? The answer lies in how we choose to apply the lessons of the past. By addressing climate change with urgency, fostering dialogue over division, and balancing technological progress with ethical foresight, we can steer humanity toward a brighter future. The stories of lost empires aren't just cautionary tales, they're blueprints for survival. The question is, will we use them wisely? What if the key to solving today's most pressing challenges lies not in the future, but in the past? History is more than a collection of forgotten stories. It's a treasure trove of lessons waiting to be applied. Lost empires, with their rise and fall, offer us a playbook for resilience, adaptation, and renewal. By studying their successes and failures, we can uncover strategies to tackle modern issues like climate change, inequality, and cultural erosion. Take Iceland, for example. After its catastrophic economic collapse in 2008, the nation didn't just rebuild, it reimagined itself. By prioritizing sustainable development, fostering equitable governance, and preserving its cultural identity, Iceland transformed crisis into opportunity. This small island nation became a beacon of resilience, proving that even the most dire circumstances can lead to profound renewal. But Iceland's story is just one example. Across the globe, we see echoes of ancient wisdom guiding modern decisions. From the sustainable water management practices of the Inca to the decentralized governance of the Iroquois Confederacy, history offers us blueprints for a better future. The question isn't whether we can learn from the past, it's whether we're willing to act on those lessons. As we stand at the crossroads of progress and peril, the choices we make today will shape the legacy we leave behind. Can we rewrite the future by listening to the whispers of history? The answer lies in our willingness to reflect, adapt, and grow. The rise and fall of lost empires are not just tales of grandeur and decline, they are cautionary lessons etched into the fabric of history. These civilizations, from the sprawling Roman Empire to the enigmatic Maya, show us that even the mightiest powers are not immune to the forces of time, ambition, and change. But more than that, their stories reveal patterns of innovation, hubris, resilience, and adaptation that echo loudly in our modern world. Think about it. The Roman Empire's reliance on infrastructure and governance mirrors our own globalized systems. The Maya's collapse under environmental stress reminds us of the delicate balance between progress and sustainability. And the Ottoman Empire's ability to bridge cultures and ideas offers a blueprint for navigating today's interconnected world. These empires may have crumbled, but their legacies are far from forgotten. They serve as mirrors, reflecting both the heights of human achievement and the pitfalls we must avoid. History isn't just a record of what's been, it's a compass pointing toward what could be. By studying these lost civilizations, we gain insight into the challenges we face today: climate change, political instability, cultural divides. But we also find hope. Time and again, humanity has shown an extraordinary capacity to rebuild, to innovate, and to rise from the ashes of its own mistakes. As the philosopher George Santayana famously said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, but those who do remember, they have the power to shape it." So, as we close this journey through the echoes of lost empires, I want to leave you with this thought. History isn't just something we study, it's something we live. The choices we make today, individually and collectively, are the threads that will weave the tapestry of tomorrow. What lessons will we take from the past? What legacy will we leave for the future? I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you see the lessons of these ancient civilizations shaping our world today? Share your ideas in the comments below, and if you found this exploration meaningful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more deep dives into the mysteries of history. Together, let's uncover the stories that connect us all, past, present, and future.